Shalom from Jerusalem. This is TV7's Israel at War update. And as we're set to deliberate the latest developments here in Israel, throughout the region and beyond, it's always important to remember how this war began. 363 days ago, on October 7th of last year, the Islamist Hamas and its terror affiliates in the Gaza Strip launched an onslaught on southern Israel, declaring war by perpetrating a massacre, murdering some 1,200, mostly civilians, wounding over 4,800 others, and kidnapping 246 people, including elderly, men, women, children, and infants. 101 of them remain in Hamas captivity to date. The subsequent day, on October 8th of last year, Iran essentially joined that war when it greenlighted its proxy in Lebanon, Hezbollah, to launch cross-border attacks against Israel. Since then, roughly 10,000 projectiles have been fired toward Israeli territory, and not only by Hezbollah from Lebanon. Additional Iranian proxies have joined, including from Yemen, from Iraq, from Syria, including Iran proper, which for the second time in less than 3 months has launched at least 600 rockets, other projectiles from Iranian territory towards Israel. And to deliberate that and much more, let's now turn to Central Israel, where we're joined by Colonel in Reserve Miri Eisen, currently a senior fellow at the Institute for Counterterrorism at Reichman University in Herzliya, as well as formerly an IDF intelligence directorate senior officer, as well as an advisor at the Prime Minister's office. It's good to see you, Miri. What can you... Shalom, shalom. What can you tell us about the current state of play, of course, with the center of gravity being in Lebanon? How are things evolving since the Iranian attack once again on Tuesday?
Hezbollah, over the last 24 and 48 hours, has fired into Israel more per day than they ever have. I don't think people understand that right now Israel is on an offensive against these Hezbollah, Radwan terrorists, and others inside southern Lebanon. And as they do so, Hezbollah are using the capabilities that they have, both the different types of projectiles directly on Israeli troops, on the communities in the Israeli side, and further in the city of Tiberias and others. So as those battles go on, as the Israeli troops are, in the IDF terms, going on a clear-cut, pointed operation, Hezbollah is continuing to use their capabilities. The Israeli air superiority, which has been such an important element over all of this war, in the last few days is again being used against the different Hezbollah targets inside the southern portions of Beirut and others. All of these different targets that are being attacked by Israel are the Hezbollah. When we call them a stronghold, let's remind ourselves these are weapon facilities, terror activists, and we continue to do so. And as I say that, just in the last 24 hours, here we are in the Jewish holiday. The Israeli troops are fighting up north and continuing to fight in the Gaza Strip. In these last 24 hours, the IDF has put out that months ago, and this goes to show part of the information war that constantly goes hand in hand with everything else going on, that the IDF eliminated already 3 months ago what was essentially Yahya Sinwar's close crony, somebody who had been with him in Israeli jail. He was killed 3 months ago, but only now did Hamas let us know. And I say that also because of the numbers that we follow, and our heart can go out to all of the civilians, but Hamas is not putting out the numbers or names of the Hamas operatives that are being killed. Hezbollah, the same way, is not putting out the numbers of the Hezbollah terror fighters that are being killed. All of this is going on still as we talk, continuing also with projectiles that are firing into Israel from Iraq, from Syria, all of this just in the last 24 hours, continuing as we talk.
Indeed. For more information on that, let's now turn to Central Israel, where we're joined by the commander of the Israeli Air Force Task Force for Air and Missile Defense, namely Brigadier General in Reserve, Doron Gavish. It's good to see you, General. What can you tell us more about the latest 24 hours, barrages upon barrages upon barrages, if I may put it plainly?
Well, indeed, you're right, Jonathan. You were saying that we saw around 300 and more projectiles, rockets coming from Iran. I would like just to say that we're talking about missile, that in each one of them, the number of explosive is around 1,000 pounds. So this is a huge explosive amount of explosives that is being shot toward Israel. And this is what we've seen. And fortunately enough, the combined defense of Israel, together with the enhancement from the US forces and the behavior of our civilians, allowed us to come out of it without any injuries. But this is a huge amount of explosive. And, we could just imagine ourselves that if all of those, or majority of them, were not intercepted, or people would not behave as they were expected, it was really close to devastating to some of our cities. So this is what we are seeing, and in some extent, Miri touched it, that here in Israel, we are doing everything that we can in order to defend the Israeli population. And the pictures that you see are the picture of defending the skies mainly, and not buildings which are collapsing from what they've did. But we have to look at it from the point of view that to imagine that this is something that could be looked differently. We know what is their intent, and this is how we should look at it. And I've talked about missile, but of course we have to remember that just yesterday, 2 o'clock at night, there was a UAV that were shot from Yemen that was intercepted by the Israeli Air Force. And this is something which is happening again and again and again, from the Hezbollah, from Syria, from Iran, from Iraq, from Yemen. And we are being continuously attacked. So this is, of course, the situation that we see. But we also see that Israel changed its strategy, still on the defense, but with some offensive measures in the last months. And also with Iran, I don't think that the last word has been said. We cannot allow ourselves to be continuously and directly hit here in Israel and being attacked from Iran without any retaliation from our part. And I also hope that it won't be only us.
Indeed. Let's now turn elsewhere in central Israel, where we're joined by Brigadier General in Reserve Yaron Rosen, formerly the IDF Chief of Cyber Staff and Israel Air Force Commander and a fighter pilot. It's good to see you, General. I'd like to ask you particularly about the Iranian angle. Of course, the message that is coming out of Iran by multiple officials there is the United States and Europe should rein in Israel before it makes a mistake. Of course, they are terrified. It seems like not only these concerns are projected in the oil pricing soaring, and we can expect that to soar further as we inch closer into Israel's retaliatory strikes against strategic installations throughout Iran, but also the concerns that it may destabilize the regime. How can we interpret this, and what should we also look at from a broader perspective on how this is going to impact its web of various proxies throughout the region?
Yeah, it's a great way into the big question of, will the international community weigh in, namely the United States? We have to remember that the United States has, this administration specifically, will have a very big challenge to step in. And, it makes you wonder these days, and it takes me back also to the day of the red lines of President Obama. It makes you think about red lines, and when a United States president says don't, does it actually mean it won't? It's a real thing on how the United States projects its power globally, and I think everybody's looking at it. So if this president said don't, I wonder, out loud, what does it mean? Don't what? What needs to happen in the mind of the United States, the president of the United States, in order for the United States to step in offensively? That is something which is very important to think about as these days pass, when Israel is, getting ready for some kind of retaliation. And then specifically from the Israeli side, of course, the big question is how deep and how far will Israel take this retaliation? What is the scope of the attack? Is it economic targets? Is it the military targets? Is it the nuclear infrastructure? Is Israel going to go all the way? Because this is exactly how Iran will look like when it has nuclear weapons in its hands. It won't change. It actually will be more aggressive with its proxies, with its own behavior. So this is a real turning point for the world. So that's, I think, the main context of where we are in the next few days. Israel will take its time to prepare for such a retaliation. I don't know if it's going to be hours, days, or a week or two. It doesn't matter. It's actually quite good that we're keeping the other side on their toes. But we have to understand the wider context. A United States president said don't to the Iranian regime. What's going to come out of that? The wider context and the history of administrations of the United States administrations, and also the war in Iraq and the fact that basically the United States pulled out of Iraq. This is bringing back fears probably and challenges in deciding how to react now with the Iranian aggression.
Indeed, and when a don't by the superpower of the 21st century is not heeded, namely by the Islamic Republic of Iran, what does it send to its regional proxies? What does it send to its more robust and powerful adversaries, namely China and Russia, and even North Korea? But Colonel Miri, when I'm hearing what's coming out of Washington, initially we hear, of course, U.S. President Joe Biden coming out and defining as severe consequences to Iranians' actions, then subsequently start saying, okay, I do not support an attack against nuclear infrastructure. Then they start leaking all kind of statements about not supporting attacks against critical oil infrastructure. And let's leave the 3 points there. What are we to expect? Is the United States now going to start and leak additional targets that potentially Israel may target in order to dissuade Israel from striking those targets? Or is this just actually a collaborated move in order to keep the other side guessing?
Could it be both? And in this sense, I want to say that I'm very disturbed to the linkage that's being done now in that sense, where the Iranian issue is linked into the issue of Hamas, let alone Hezbollah. Those are the Iranian proxies. And I say it's not linked in the way of let's stop the proxies, let's stop Iran. It's linked into them, from my point of view as an Israeli, in the negative way of stop the fight against Hamas, stop the fight against Hezbollah, and then everything will go away. That linkage disturbs me. I'm very wary of saying, both on targeting and others, Israel is absolutely a regional power. All of our viewers understand that. I understand that as an Israeli. We are not a world power. We are a regional power. Our capabilities, very much together with who we are as a country, as a democracy, are in working with our allies. And in this case, it's hard to disconnect. I've heard firmer statements in the last 48 hours from the Prime Minister of Great Britain and from the President of France than I have heard from the United States. And again, the United States has been an amazing backer in the horrific Hamas war that they started against us. They have been there in so many different ways. But so when you ask, what does it mean? At the end of the day, Jonathan, we do all understand the United States is going to elections in 1 month on November 5th. And that is a month away. And I'm very unhappy as an Israeli that this issue, the Israeli issue, not the Iranian issue, that the Israeli issue has become a point of contention. I never want to be a partisan issue. And I want the Islamic regime of Iran and that very clear stance towards the Islamic regime of Iran to be a bipartisan issue, that all of the Americans understand that it threatens them, not just because of Israel, but because it threatens the Western world.
Yes, but Colonel Eisen, when you hear Ayatollah Ali Khamenei come out and declare to his followers that the main problem in the Middle East is not necessarily Israel, it is the United States and a number of European countries, does that not put the Iranians on par with the Americans as the keen adversary of the United States and its influence in the region?
There's no question whatsoever that right now we're all hearing the different voices. I think that I don't like seeing diplomacy as being either or with military capabilities. I'd like to introduce the term of coercive diplomacy, meaning you really have to mean that you're willing to use force to be able to get to real diplomacy, certainly within the Middle East. And I think that in that sense, the initiative and that Israel is on now means that we're showing that we're willing to use it, and that doesn't mean we don't want diplomacy. But in the Middle East, they have to believe the threats, otherwise there is no diplomacy.
Thank you very much, Miri, as you're set to leave us for another engagement. Let's now turn to General Gavish, but before I do, I would like to highlight something to our viewers from the United States. Our hearts go out to all of you who have been struck by the horrendous natural disaster that occurred right now in the United States. Our hearts go out to you and our prayers as well. We know that even though we're dealing here with atrocities committed against us from the Islamic Republic of Iran and its various proxies throughout the region, nevertheless, we do see also what you're going through right now. And from North Carolina to Augusta, Georgia, where we have many friends all across those various states that have been hit. Again, our prayers go out to you. Now, returning to our region once more, General Gavish, I'd like to highlight the robust American efforts, British efforts, and French efforts, additional regional actors, including Jordan, who stood by Israel once again during the attack that occurred on Tuesday by the Islamic Republic of Iran against Israel, that speaks volumes.
But I think, Jonathan, first of all, allow me to join the prayers. As you mentioned, our hearts really goes with those families in the United States. And going back to your question, I think that we should go to the last talk that our Prime Minister had in the UN. And I think the two maps that he shows, this is really the story. The story of who is in the black side and who is in the white side, the story of the Mediterranean and the way that it's going to be shaped. And from one side, there are those countries that you mentioned, and of course, Saudi and the Gulf countries, Egypt, Jordan. And this is really the potential of countries that we could have a prospect relations with them. We do have already with some of them, and all the West, not only Israel. And then from the other side, you have Iran as the destabilizer of this region, Syria, Hezbollah, Yemen, and others. So really, this is the story, and this is the way that we should look at it, and we should strengthen the countries which are together as a coalition against Iran. I think that everyone in the region understands it. There is no question marks about it anymore. And so I really hope for the West, following what was mentioned by Rosen, because I think he's right. At some point when you say don't, okay, so what does it mean, don't? Because they did. And this is something that we all have to look at and to react to it. And this is also relevant to the deterrence. Deterrence, if we look in Israel, we were very, I would say, conservative in the way that we fought in the northern part of Israel for 10 months. And we said again and again, kind of don't to the Hezbollah, but they didn't understood. They didn't really listen to it. Our deterrence was hurt because they felt that they could continuously do it. And when we shifted to the offensive part, again, in order to defend Israel, I think that everyone around us, for sure, the Hezbollah and what is left for their leaders, the deterrence is now in some other place, and not only in Lebanon, because we saw the Iranian behavior. Although they are shooting, I think the deterrence is there. So deterrence is really when you say something that you would do, your enemy needs to understand that you are willing to do it. And unfortunately, I think that if we want to bring the deterrence back to this region, we should be also on the offensive. Very unfortunate, but this is the situation.
Just to establish an analogy, it's like telling a toddler don't. If the toddler continues to do it and you keep on saying don't without consequences, he will continue to do it. General Rosen, I'd like to ask you particularly, as one of the top experts, in my opinion, on maritime shipping, navigation, for various reasons, I, when we're talking about the latest strikes, including against a British vessel just over the past 24 hours, when once again a surface vehicle, a maritime vehicle, unmanned, was launched towards a British vessel. The security team tried to shoot it out of the water, failed to do so, and it struck that oil tanker, costing Britain a few billions once more in oil revenues. But nonetheless, we're talking here about a very significant development in which we're seeing the Iranians expanding that influence to other regions in Africa, alongside Russia, alongside China, including in Madagascar, for instance, including, of course, in Somalia, with growing influence also drawn south or south of there into Kenya, somewhat northern Kenya, where corruption is reportedly robust. What will happen if those additional trade lines that circumvent the already blockaded Bab el-Mandeb by the Houthis in Yemen will also be disrupted, and the shipping surrounding the Cape of Hope will also be disrupted to the point where we'll see the images that we're right now seeing in the area of Singapore, where there is a backlog of ships, quite robust one, where they are trying to break through in order to reach their designated or intended ports, and we're only seeing this getting worse.
Yeah, I guess, I keep mentioning the meaning of the straits, the straits of Mandab. Bab el-Mandab is the straits of tears. How strange that is the name. And I think we're gonna be crying for a very long time if we keep on, not reflecting power in the right way. Excuse me. That so the Iranians will go on and expand elsewhere, and I'm sure they will disrupt something else that we don't completely understand right now. Now, global maritime has rules of its own. This space, it's a highly logistical supply chain, global supply chain that makes the global economy turn and operate. And when you disrupt these change, these global inflection points, it really disrupts economies worldwide. This is bad for China, actually. This is bad for Japan. This is bad for commerce going east and west. And the Suez Canal is a huge part of global movement, free movement of global goods and whatnot. So I think that I keep mentioning that it is absolutely amazing to me that the Western world actually accepted these straits being blocked. That is the bottom line. Israel by itself, with no help from anyone, as much as I love my country, it's only a regional power. Israel by itself hit Yemen twice already, quite hard, but not for long. There's always room for getting back to. They will get back on their feet. Who needs to take care of that? Is that Israel's role? Yes, it is because it's a regional power, but it is also the role of the United States and its Western allies. This is how low I think the United States deterrence is at the point we are in right now. It is very sad because it reflects on the United States globally, and as you mentioned, it reflects on how Russia views the United States threats and how how China views the United States threats vis-a-vis Taiwan and other places around the world, both in economic and military terms. So this is something that is not for Israel only. Okay, this is important for the United States and for the West and the normalcy of the Western life, if you will, as we move forward. And I think that is why this point in time that was created by the Iranians that decided to aggressively attack Western democracy. This is why this needs to be a turning point for the whole failure of Western deterrence in the region. And I hope that even though the elections are nearing, it will actually be viewed and used as an opportunity to push back.
Absolutely. Just for context, in 1988, when Iran tried to block the Strait of Hormuz, the United States, within a couple of hours, sunk half and even more than half of the Iranian fleet in response, which the Iranians naturally tucked tail and fled. So yeah, it does indicate that when there is leadership and a robust response, the Iranians respond accordingly. But unfortunately, this is all the time that we have for today. For today's update, I'd like to once again thank Miri, who already left, but also General Rosen and General Gavish for all of your insights, and also take this opportunity to highlight to you at home that TV7 Israel is a donation-based nonprofit, and therefore, if you're blessed by our productions and would like to help support us, please go to our website at www.tv7israelnews.com, where you can prescribe a donation. Until our next update, from here in Jerusalem, wishing you a Shana Tova once again, and until our next update, Shalom.